Hey all, welcome to Anime Octopus. Today's topic dives deep into a theory that's been lurking beneath the surface. Naruko is a hidden ANBU commander. That's right, we're exploring a bold, unexpected angle on one of the most mysterious alternate versions in the Naruto universe. This theory blends speculation, hidden clues, and a touch of imagination, perfect for fans who love unraveling what could be happening behind the scenes. Disclaimer: the content on this channel is for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any of the anime footage used in my videos. All rights and credits go to their respective creators and copyright holders. Let's get into it. A girl no older than 12 dashed through the forest with remarkable agility, making her way toward the ANBU headquarters to report in before school. It was around 2 a.m., but she hoped to get at least a little rest before classes started at 7. Quietly, she pressed her hand against the seal, channeled a bit of chakra, and waited as the door recognized her presence and swung open. Naruko slipped inside, her black uniform allowing her to blend seamlessly with the dim hallways. Only the glint of the sword strapped across her back revealed her presence. The katana, designed specifically for her, was a custom-made weapon, light, balanced, and perfect for her unique combination of kenjutsu, taijutsu, and ninjutsu. Like all ANBU operatives, Naruko had her own specialized gear, tailored for high-level missions that demanded skill, speed, and strategy. She knocked politely at the Hokage's office, submitted her mission report, and handed over a scroll containing the results of her assignment. She was dismissed with a nod and quickly headed back to her small apartment. A few short hours of sleep passed in the blink of an eye. Before she knew it, her alarm buzzed at 6:45 a.m. "Oh no," Naruko exclaimed, scrambling to pull on her orange jumpsuit over the ANBU uniform she had accidentally fallen asleep in. She hurried through her morning routine, unfortunately, no time for a shower today, checked that her tattoo was hidden, and raced out the door with a bowl of beef miso ramen from Ichiraku's in hand. The soup had extra onions and some mysterious vegetables she couldn't quite identify, but it tasted delicious, so she slurped it up without complaint. By the time she arrived at the academy, she was nearly 20 minutes late. "Iruka-sensei, I'm here," she called, rushing to her usual seat in the back row. A few students chuckled, while others didn't even look up, some out of laziness, and some just trying to act cool. Sure, Naruko could have set an internal alarm, or finished her breakfast in 5 minutes like she sometimes had to on missions. But today, she just didn't feel like it. And besides, Iruka-sensei was usually pretty understanding. "Naruko. Stay after school today, again. When are you going to take this seriously?" Maybe not so understanding this time. "Yes, Iruka-sensei," she replied with a sigh. That day's lesson was on the history of the daimyo and the political structure of the Land of Fire. Naruko already knew most of it, she had learned much more advanced material through her ANBU training. Still, she liked Iruka-sensei and appreciated the way he treated her with genuine kindness, almost like family. He was one of the few people who cared about her not just as a student, but as a person. The lesson eventually shifted to the Hokages of Konoha. Naruko's attention drifted, and she found herself glancing at the student she had been assigned to observe and protect, her mission, given years ago. Back then, she hadn't been a full-fledged ANBU operative. At 6 years old, no child could be, no matter how hard-working or talented. But as she continued at the academy while maintaining a cheerful, slightly clueless cover, she had risen to become the captain of her ANBU team. A sad thought crossed her mind, and she let out a soft laugh. "Uzumaki. Would you care to explain what's so funny about the 4th Hokage?" They had transitioned from talking about daimyo to the history of Konoha's Hokages. Naruko quickly composed herself. "Well, I was just wondering. What if the 4th Hokage wasn't really as majestic looking as in the portraits, and was actually just a really grumpy old man pretending to look cool?" The class burst out laughing. Iruka gave her a stern look, clearly understanding the comparison was directed at the current Hokage, the 3rd. "That's enough, Naruko. Don't be disrespectful," he said, tossing a chalkboard eraser her way. Naruko dodged it easily. "One more hour added to your detention." She groaned internally. That meant she wouldn't have time for dinner before she had to report to ANBU headquarters by 5:30 p.m. School ended at 3:30 p.m., cutting things close. "Aw, come on, ear. Do you want another hour?" Naruko quickly shook her head. The rest of the school day passed without incident. When her detention finally ended, she dashed out of the classroom, ran home to change, tossed her orange jumpsuit aside, put on her ANBU gear, and grabbed her fox mask before sprinting toward headquarters. It was ironic. She, the vessel of the nine-tailed fox, had been assigned the codename Kitsune. Her nickname among shinobi, one whispered with respect, was the Red Slash. Not because of anything gruesome, but because of the streak of red on her fox mask and the swift elegance of her wind-based jutsu, which left an unmistakable trail. Her chakra affinity was wind, after all, sharp, unpredictable, and unstoppable. She arrived 10 minutes late, backpack of scrolls slung over her shoulder. At least she wasn't as late as Hatake Kakashi, who arrived even later, his trademark silver hair defying gravity as usual. Kitsune. You're late, said Amaya, the mission coordinator, arms crossed. Though her face was calm, her tone carried weight. Naruko gave a respectful bow. Apologies, Amaya-san. I'll make sure it doesn't happen again. Humph. I'll let it slide this time. No report. She breathed a quiet sigh of relief. That spared her from having to explain why she was held after school. It wouldn't look good for a highly skilled ANBU operative to be caught up in classroom punishments. Just then, Kakashi entered casually, looking entirely unbothered. You're late, Kakashi-san, Naruko said with a teasing tone. Ma, only a little, senpai, he replied softly, his eye crinkling in amusement behind the mask. Amaya rolled her eyes, clearly used to their banter. Kitsune, your assignment will span a maximum of 3 days. Your objective is to secure at least 4 out of 12 Kiri Nin who are currently disrupting one of the Fire Country's villages. They are ranked Jounin or high-level Chonin. I'm confident your team is equipped to handle this task. The team nodded in acknowledgement. With a gentle breeze and practice synchronization, they vanished, already making their way toward the village noted in their mission scrolls. Inu, Target 1. I'll focus on 5, they appear to be combining chakra elements. One of them has wind affinity. Understood. Watch out, Nico. Kitsune darted forward, intercepting an attacker who had approached the ANBU member Nico from behind as she defended against 3 opponents simultaneously. She turned, her porcelain feline mask reflecting her narrowed focus. Kitsune's blade swiftly incapacitated the attacker. As the enemy stumbled, Naruko promptly intervened, striking the back of his head with the handle of her wakizashi to subdue him. Her hands glowed a calming green as she applied basic healing techniques to stabilize him, before handing him over to Hikagaru, the ANBU operative with a toad-inspired mask, responsible for securing the captives in manageable condition. Inu continued facing off with 1 and 5. Signs of impact were evident, his silver hair now streaked with a reddish hue from a previous clash. Kitsune engaged, manipulating wind release techniques with remarkable finesse. While opponents skilled in chakra manipulation were formidable, Kitsune's ANBU training had honed his ability to counter them effectively. His katana, cloaked in wind chakra, cleanly disrupted 5's defense and rendered him unconscious with a precise strike. Well done, team, Kitsune said, surveying the controlled scene. Minimal environmental disturbance and barely any signs of a skirmish. Nico, however, you need to stay more alert. I've told you before. Kat gave a sheepish shrug. Kitsune-senpai, I always feel like you'll have my back. That's no justification. You mustn't rely solely on that. I understand. I'll train that area more seriously. Kitsune nodded, then turned to Hikagaru to check if the captives were stable enough to transport. She nodded affirmatively. They began positioning the 4 captives, while the others had been neutralized with carefully contained fire techniques, into a neat row. As Nico, Bor, Inu, and Hikagaru began collecting any useful intel from the captives' pouches, Bor suddenly raised a hand. Everyone stop. There's a sensory trap. But the warning came a moment too late. A blinding flash erupted, followed by a powerful burst of light and concussive energy. The captives' forms vanished in the explosion, while the force sent the ANBU operatives tumbling through the trees. Shards of metallic debris struck them as they were thrown backward. Nico and Hikagaru lost consciousness upon impact, along with Bor. Only Inu and Kitsune, having been flung upward instead of sideways, were momentarily spared and managed to brace themselves mid-air. They landed in the surrounding branches and quickly descended to assess the situation. The aftermath was chaotic, with debris scattered and smoke rising. However, it was the state of their comrades that caused the most concern. Kitsune gently checked Nico's pulse, visibly relieved to find one, albeit faint. Inu confirmed that both Hikagaru and Bor were also alive, though unconscious. Nico, often too bold in the field, had taken the brunt of the impact. Inu glanced at Kitsune, still youthful in stature, but carrying burdens far heavier than her age suggested. He had long tried to persuade her to leave the ANBU, concerned for her well-being. But Naruko, codenamed Kitsune, was determined to carry out her duties, believing deeply in her responsibility. Snapping out of his reflection, Inu carefully lifted 2 unconscious teammates. Kitsune did the same with the third, and despite the fatigue weighing on them both, they made steady progress through the forest. Eventually, they stopped in a small clearing. Kitsune turned. Inu, let me carry Boar. You're overexerting yourself. You're also worn out. Inu's voice trailed off as he collapsed, finally overwhelmed by exhaustion. Kitsune quickly knelt, channeling her chakra into Inu's wounds to stabilize him. Though her reserves were low, she managed to heal the most critical areas. Knowing she couldn't rely on her storage scrolls, sealing living beings could be harmful if they're not stable, she chose a gentler method. She summoned wind chakra, using it to support and carefully carry her teammates behind her, ensuring they avoided obstacles as she moved quickly through the woods. After nearly 7 hours, with frequent pauses to catch her breath, Naruko finally neared their destination. It had taken them 5 hours to reach the conflict zone, and she still had a fair distance to go. Boar had regained consciousness briefly, long enough for Naruko to offer him water, but the others remained unconscious. Still, she pressed on. 2 gate guards rushed toward the group, immediately recognizing the urgency. They helped lower the injured ANBU from the controlled wind currents. Naruko dropped to the ground in exhaustion. She hadn't maintained her transformation during the return, doing so would have been unwise, but she remained cautious. Her true identity had to remain hidden. If anyone discovered that she was Uzumaki Naruko, the academy student, it could compromise her entire covert operation. Thankfully, during the commotion, the guards focused entirely on the wounded. When they finally looked toward the quiet figure nearby, her hair dyed dark, her features partially hidden behind a mask, they simply saw a competent ANBU operative calmly watching. At her signal, the injured were transported to the hospital immediately. Naruko remained at the gates, resting as she stood guard temporarily, scanning the forest vigilantly. Several minutes later, Kamizuki Izumo and Hagane Kotetsu returned, surprised to see the young operative still alert and stationed at her post. She turned, offered a simple wave, and walked away. As she rounded the corner, her transformation faded, revealing her true appearance, blonde hair, tired but clear blue eyes, and she made her way back to her modest apartment. Without even checking for the usual troublemakers that lingered in the area, Naruko stumbled into bed, the fatigue finally catching up with her. Her mission had been completed, and her secret remained intact. Kitsune's internal sense of time stirred her awake, and she realized she had dozed off in her ANBU uniform, again. She quickly removed the torn and damaged attire, took a swift shower, and dressed in a fresh set of her standard black ANBU gear. A glance at the clock showed it was 4:23 a.m. Wait. She had completely forgotten to submit her mission report the previous evening. Shaking her head at the oversight, she adjusted her cloth mask, picked up her cracked ANBU mask, and instantly transported herself to the Hokage's office using the body flicker technique. The hastily written report was clutched in her hand, a disorganized mess, but it existed. She placed it on her superior's desk and stood silently, awaiting permission to clarify some crucial points. Her commander skimmed the paper, struggling to decipher the hasty scrawl, then gave her a nod, silently inviting her to speak. I apologize. The mission was unsuccessful. We underestimated the opposing side, or rather, the sophistication of their equipment. We accessed their supply pouches without properly scanning for potential traps. Each one we reached into reacted to our chakra and activated specialized mechanisms that launched metallic fragments at dangerous speeds, easily exceeding 200 miles per hour. I suspect they were prepared to disable their materials rather than let them be recovered in case of capture. We were unable to retrieve any materials, and some of our members sustained injuries as a result. Her commander silently acknowledged her words, crumpled the unreadable report, and tossed it effortlessly into the waste bin across the room, landing it directly in the center. Your written report is unusable, Kitsune. I couldn't make out a single word. But I appreciate the verbal clarification. I'm granting your team 2 weeks of medical leave. Your academy instructor has already been informed that you'll miss another day, today. However, if you're feeling capable, you may still attend. Kitsune nodded. I'll attend today. I have reason to believe Mizuki may cause issues if left unchecked. I discovered his detailed plans hidden inside the briefcase he carries everywhere. It seems he documented his intentions for a personal mission. Fortunately, I intercepted the notes and replaced them with an exact replica I created, leaving no traces of my chakra. I matched the handwriting perfectly. She handed the documents to her commander, who reviewed them with a discerning eye. Evidence was crucial if they were to confront Mizuki and force a confession regarding his intentions. Later that morning. "Hey, Iruka-sensei. What are we doing today?" Naruko called out brightly, scanning the classroom. She noted that only Sasuke and Shino had arrived early along with their instructor. Waking up before dawn had left her restless and unable to fall back asleep. "Naruko?" Iruka looked up, clearly surprised and somewhat relieved. The ANBU assigned to monitor her had reported that she was ill, which was difficult to believe. Naruko rarely, if ever, fell sick, not even during the coldest winter months. Despite her solitary living situation, she always arrived at class energetic and healthy. But today, there was a noticeable difference. The tired eyes and the faint shadows beneath them told a different story. Still, Iruka reminded himself not to overthink it. Maybe she had simply had a difficult night. Glancing up from his paperwork, he saw Naruko playfully poking Sasuke, who sat with his usual stoic expression. After a few nudges, Sasuke swung at her. Naruko flipped backward with a clumsy spin and landed lightly on the desk in front of Shino, who quietly stood and moved away from the playful exchange. "Let's keep it peaceful, everyone. There'll be plenty of opportunity for sparring later," Iruka said, offering a calm warning. Naruko giggled and made her way to her usual seat in the back row. Judging by Iruka's comment, today was likely a sparring day. Sasuke returned to his seat with a quiet huff, clearly unimpressed. Naruko smirked to herself. She figured that pushing Sasuke's buttons a bit might eventually lead to a stronger connection. Rivalries often turned into mutual respect and even friendships over time. More students began to enter the classroom, and soon enough, the usual disagreement between Sakura and Ino began about who would sit beside Sasuke. Naruko rolled her eyes slightly. To her, they seemed more focused on the idea of shinobi life as some fantasy romance than actual training. Iruka quickly stepped in, assigning Shikamaru to sit beside Sasuke to stop the argument. Shikamaru, though unmotivated, was clearly intelligent. Naruko respected his quiet brilliance. If he applied himself more, he could probably surpass even Sasuke and Sakura in academics and tactics. Once the entire class had gathered, Iruka-sensei announced they'd be reviewing fundamental techniques, basic katas, jutsu, and weapon handling, followed by a small tournament. Everyone moved outside, and as they stretched, the fresh grass stained their clothing, much to the girls' dismay. Some of them complained about the marks on their uniforms, while several of the boys snickered, which led to some light-hearted retaliation from the girls. Naruko found the exchange amusing. As they warmed up, Iruka reviewed the rules as he always did before a sparring event, pausing occasionally to quiet minor disputes. Naruko didn't focus on the speech, she was more interested in watching her classmates. Many of the girls appeared nervous, especially Hinata, while Sakura and Ino were once again arguing, this time about who would win in a duel. Iruka eventually announced the matchups. First up, Sakura versus Ino. The girls stepped forward and exchanged a few tentative punches and kicks, though Ino's form showed a bit more rhythm and confidence. With one swift move, she stepped forward and delivered a controlled strike that caused Sakura to stagger backward. Iruka ended the match and declared Ino the winner. The remainder of the matches progressed rather quickly. I faced off against Shikamaru, who chose to forfeit after the match dragged on beyond 5 minutes. My next opponent was Sasuke. Internally, I sighed. To maintain appearances, I had to deliberately hold back, moving slower and showcasing only a fraction of my true skill, so the rookie could appear to surpass the so-called underachiever. During the match, I intentionally misdirected a slow punch off to the side, allowing Sasuke the chance to grab my arm and throw me to the ground. That's when I felt an unusual burning sensation on my ANBU tattoo. My attention snapped into focus. Alarmed, I raised both hands in surrender and hurriedly told Iruka-sensei I needed to use the restroom, then quickly made my way in that direction. Once out of sight, I used the Shunshine technique to appear at the ANBU headquarters. In an instant, several ANBU operatives materialized at the entrance. We filed in, quiet and alert, all awaiting word from our ANBU commander. Though we ultimately reported to the Hokage, the commander existed to coordinate our activities and maintain discipline, ensuring that everything remained efficient. After all, the Hokage couldn't manage every detail personally. I stood toward the side of the meeting room, an uneasy feeling lingering in my chest. Something felt off. My instincts were whispering a warning. I noticed that some teams, including my own, were absent, likely because they were on active duty and couldn't leave their posts. The briefing would eventually reach them, but this gathering was different. Every ANBU present held the rank of captain. Silence enveloped the room as we waited. Obedience and discipline had been deeply instilled in us. When the commander opened his mouth to speak, he unexpectedly collapsed. Just like that, he fell over without warning. Several of us rushed forward. The two closest knelt down, checking for signs of consciousness, breathing, pulse, any indication he was responsive. "He's unresponsive," one of them announced in a serious tone. The rest of us remained frozen for a moment, staring at the commander, unsure of what had just unfolded, or what we were meant to do next. Why had we been summoned? Had he known something was about to happen and tried to reach out before it was too late? I stepped forward and said, "First things first, we need to inform the Hokage." Someone then asked with surprise, Kitsune? Why are you still in that outfit?" I glanced down and realized I was still wearing the bright orange training suit from class. Oh no. At least I had remembered to maintain the henge over my face and suppress the fox's chakra. It had become such a habit, I barely noticed I was doing it anymore. "It's just a disguise," I said. "But that isn't important right now. Should I seal the body into a scroll for transport?" There was a moment of silence while they considered it. Another ANBU quickly responded, "Better not. That might disrupt any remaining chakra traces, we might need those to gather clues." I nodded. "Then we'll need to disguise him." Thinking carefully, I cast a henge over his form. His hair lengthened and lightened to a sandy blonde, his tall stature adjusted slightly shorter, and his clothing transformed into something a civilian might wear. I added some faint markings to suggest a minor injury, just enough to explain why a group of ANBU might be escorting someone without drawing suspicion. I checked the illusion carefully. It was flawless. Everyone agreed with a nod. Hedgehog, one of the ANBU captains, gently lifted the body. A small group of us formed a perimeter around him, and we dashed across the rooftops toward the Hokage's office. Some fellow shinobi glanced curiously as we passed, but we moved swiftly and efficiently. I was glad I had maintained the henge, our identities needed to remain hidden. We entered the Hokage's office through the window, catching the Sandaime by surprise. His expression shifted from curiosity to deep concern when he noticed we were carrying someone. I released the henge, revealing my true appearance, which further shocked him. The Hokage immediately left his desk and crouched beside the fallen commander, inspecting him closely. A weary sigh escaped him as he stood again, brushing a hand over his tired face. His gaze swept over each of us, searching for an explanation. I stepped forward and calmly summarized everything that had occurred, finishing with, "What are your orders, Hokage-sama?" He paused, then asked, "Who was the first to take control of the situation?" We were caught off guard by the question. For a brief moment, no one responded. Then I quietly stepped forward again. "I did." No one disputed it. The Hokage's eyebrows lifted in subtle surprise. "Really?" We stood in respectful silence. After a moment, he gave a small nod and said, "Then how would you like to become the new ANBU commander?" A new command. A deep and unexpected silence settled over the entire room. Though we were trained to react quickly and calmly to any situation, we were all momentarily frozen. Especially me, after all, I was the one everyone was staring at. I was only 12. Despite my incredible strength and skill as a shinobi, being appointed as commander of all the ANBU? It felt surreal. I had always dreamed of becoming Hokage, but even with all my ambition, I couldn't ignore how unexpected this was. Most of the ANBU wouldn't accept this easily, and, as I had feared, many looked visibly uncertain. But before those feelings could take root, the Hokage intervened. "I can't allow Danzo to absorb the ANBU into his own operations," the Hokage explained calmly. "The ANBU earn their captain positions not just through skill, but through trust. I trust every one of you. But if someone like Danzo gains influence here, we risk compromising that trust." I asked who first took charge after the incident, and it turns out, it was Kitsune. We nodded. It made sense. And yet, I wasn't sure I could earn their full respect. I was 12, barely more than a child in their eyes. The Hokage cleared his throat again. "I'll inform the others. All ANBU will meet at headquarters. This must be made official, Kitsune is the new commander. I trust you'll accept the position." He turned and left, and we followed suit, returning to the ANBU headquarters, where the other captains were still investigating the earlier disturbance. The weight of the situation pressed on my mind. Commander of the ANBU. It was the highest rank just beneath the Hokage. Could I fulfill every responsibility with the level of precision expected of me? Did I even want this role? Still, it had been entrusted to me by the Hokage himself. That alone meant I had to accept it, personal doubts aside. When we returned, the rest of the ANBU were already gathered. About 15 captains were present, each normally leading a 5-member team, making 73 people in total. One team was missing a leader, and another had always operated with only 4 members. While there were many more ANBU overall, only captains and their active team members had been called. Others were either out on assignment or not high-ranking enough to be present. Regardless, they would follow orders from the chain of command. Some of the newer recruits whispered among themselves until their captain silenced them, and the room fell into an intense hush. A moment later, the Hokage appeared in a quiet swirl of leaves. "Everyone," he began solemnly, "I bring unfortunate news. Your former commander has passed." He raised a hand to prevent the growing wave of questions. It appears he collapsed during a briefing, and despite immediate efforts, could not recover. Upon hearing this, I appointed a new commander based on both performance and leadership in the field. Some of you may feel this decision was made hastily, but I trust my judgment. From now on, you will offer your complete respect to your new leader. He gestured to me. I stepped forward, trying not to let my nerves show. I hadn't felt this nervous in years. Eyes watched my every move as I made my way to what was now my desk. I turned around, gathering courage, and addressed the room. "Those assigned to torture and investigations, please begin analyzing what happened to our previous commander. We need answers. Those currently on guard rotation, prepare to switch shifts. You may report to Amaya-san for your next assignment, or, if you need leave, speak to me afterward. I'll check your eligibility. Everyone else, return to your duties and stay alert for anything unusual. And above all, ensure the Hokage's safety." A strange tightness filled my chest. I realized I cared deeply for the commander. He had been the first person, besides the Hokage, to see something in me beyond what others believed. A memory from the past. "Catch her. Don't let her get away," shouted the man I had tried to pickpocket. He didn't care why I stole, only that I had taken his wallet. I was hungry. Tired. Shivering. The only way to survive was to find food somehow. I hated digging through trash, so I tried stealing. I knew it was wrong, but I was desperate. My hideout was only a few blocks away. I rounded the corner quickly, the rain making the path slick. My heart raced, but then I saw her, an imposing figure in a dark cloak. The ANBU commander. Before I could react, she had taken the wallet from me and held me firmly by the wrists. I tried to wriggle free. Somehow, I managed to escape, darting toward a sewer entrance, scraping my arms as I dropped into the cold water below. I fled down the tunnel and didn't look back until I was safely inside my secret hideaway. I was exhausted. Hungry. I curled up under a tree after crawling out, soaked and shaking. I gathered leaves to keep warm and rolled in the dirt to try and dry off. The cold was unbearable, and I eventually drifted into sleep, only to be startled awake by the sound of someone nearby. It was her again. I screamed and ran, but stumbled and fell. I was too tired to get up. Scratches marked my arms, and I sniffled from the cold. I felt ashamed and small next to the figure in front of me, clean, prepared, powerful. In contrast, I was a scrawny little girl in torn clothes with nothing to my name. Then she picked me up and carried me gently over her shoulder. I didn't have the strength to resist. I gave in to the warmth and safety and fell asleep. A new beginning. The ANBU commander brought me to the Hokage's office. The moment he saw me, the Hokage rushed forward, gently cradling me and wrapping me in warm blankets. He looked at me with such kindness it made my chest ache. Then he turned to the commander. "Where did you find her?" The commander explained everything, the chase, the situation, the conditions I had been living in. The Hokage's face was full of sorrow. "She's been alone in that place all this time. I couldn't leave her there," the commander admitted. "She's sharp. With proper training, she could become an excellent shinobi. But I also care. I want to give her a better life." The Hokage looked at me thoughtfully, then nodded. "There's no better option. She deserves the chance." And just like that, my path changed. I began training every day, growing stronger, learning quickly, and proving to everyone that I was more than what they had assumed. I was Naruko Uzumaki, and I would never be overlooked again. I quietly observed the highly skilled shinobi and kunoichi, each ANBU operative, begin their respective assignments before I disappeared, reappearing just a few feet from the academy's entrance atop a well-concealed tree branch. I remained there patiently, waiting for an appropriate moment to enter. Fortunately, I was still wearing my vibrant orange jumpsuit. Changing would have been unnecessarily tedious. Iruka and Mizuki had already guided the class inside, clearly having grown tired of waiting for me. I could already anticipate a lengthy conversation with Iruka-sensei. Sighing softly, I leapt down and walked inside at a relaxed pace, pausing just outside the classroom to glance through the door. I made no effort to mask my chakra, deliberately allowing Iruka-sensei to sense me. He turned to Mizuki, who promptly resumed the lesson while Iruka headed toward the door, his expression visibly tense. I stood in the hallway, leaning casually against the wall as the door opened and closed behind him. "Ah, good afternoon, sensei," I greeted cheerfully. He didn't seem amused. "Naruko," he said sternly. "It took you nearly an hour to visit the restroom. What happened?" I gave him a sheepish grin. Indigestion?" He frowned, clearly unconvinced. "That's not true, and you know it. Now, tell me what really happened." I scratched my head, feigning innocence. "Well, I was kind of irritated with Sasuke, so I climbed into a tree for a bit, and I might have fallen asleep. I guess I slipped and fell out." "You fell out of a tree? What were you thinking, napping in a tree of all places?" I shrugged. He gave me a brief but passionate lecture. I listened quietly, waiting for it to pass, until he finally let out a resigned sigh and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Naruko, I really hope this doesn't happen again. You've missed a lot of school lately, and the exam is coming up next week. You need to be ready. Understand?" I smiled, feeling warmth rise in my chest from his concern. "Of course, Iruka-sensei. Thank you." Following him back into the classroom, I returned to my usual seat beside Kiba and listened attentively as Iruka-sensei explained ways we could grow stronger. He had memorized each of our performances in detail, committed every fight to memory, just so he could offer us personalized guidance. That's what made him such an exceptional teacher. He genuinely cared for each student and treated us all with fairness and dedication, always offering support and constructive advice. The rest of the school day passed without much event, and when class was dismissed, I strolled outside. My classmates darted past me, excitedly greeting their parents. A small ache lingered in my chest watching those joyful reunions. Children my age so easily embraced by loved ones, it was hard not to feel a twinge of longing. I glanced over at Sasuke and felt a flicker of understanding. His family was gone too, taken from him in a way no one should experience. My expression softened in amusement as a group of girls ran up to him, waving brightly and attempting to give him a hug. He clearly didn't appreciate the attention. With a mildly panicked glance in my direction, he swiftly ducked under their arms and dashed off. I ambled after him, but my attention was caught by a nearby building. Oh right, I hadn't visited them yet. Oops. I should check in on my team before picking up a mission I hadn't officially accepted. Was that bitterness I was hearing in my own thoughts? Inside the hospital, I approached the front desk to inquire about the whereabouts of my teammates, Hatake Kakashi and the others. The receptionist glanced at me briefly, her expression souring before quickly composing herself into neutral professionalism. I frowned slightly. Ah, right, I was still dressed as cheerful little Naruko, the energetic academy student. That explained it. Time to change. I returned to a quiet spot, removed the jumpsuit, revealing my ANBU uniform beneath it. I pulled out the fox mask I had received earlier, sealed in a scroll from a messenger, and secured it onto my face. With that done, I moved swiftly back toward the hospital. I reminded myself firmly, I am the ANBU commander. I just have separate identities. Back at the front desk, I presented photographs of my team. The receptionist blinked in surprise, her previous demeanor replaced with anxious professionalism. She quickly flipped through the daily patient registry. "They're in rooms 401, 402, and 403, she informed me with a nervous smile. I nearly laughed, just a change in clothing and posture transformed me from overlooked to respected. How strange. I thanked her, retrieved my photographs, and made my way through the hallway. Only then did I realize I could have simply used a transformation jutsu instead. Or better yet, I could have located their chakra signatures and entered from the windows. Perhaps I was more tired than I thought. Shaking off the thought, I found the right room and stepped inside. Nico and Hikagaru were already awake, speaking in hushed tones with someone beside their bed. Oh, it was Bor. Inu entered behind me, holding a glass of water, briefly startled to find someone in his path. "Hey, Inu," I greeted. He smiled beneath his mask, his eye crinkling with warmth. "No need to be formal," he replied kindly, subtly reminding me we could speak freely. Of course, he didn't know me as Naruko. "Thank you, Kitsune," a soft voice said behind me. I turned to see Hikagaru, no, Natsuki, offering me a gentle smile. "If it weren't for you, we wouldn't have made it back. You gave everything you had to bring us home. Again. We're supposed to be elite, and yet you're the one who keeps saving us. I don't want to put you through that anymore. It's not your fault, Don't ever think it is, but most of us have decided to step away from active duty. We're grateful, but it's time. The room fell into quiet reflection, the atmosphere somber. Honestly, I would have been fine with a simple, "thank you," I said lightly, trying to ease the tension. You all know you're free to leave whenever you want. No need for dramatic speeches. Natsuki flushed slightly, then gestured for Boar to speak. Well, he began awkwardly, I'm not stepping down, just taking a break. Think of it as a hiatus. I'm going to do some traveling before returning to active duty. I raised an eyebrow, curious. Traveling? Where to? She shrugged. Oh, just traveling through the various nations, studying different shinobi techniques and strategies. The idea is to broaden my knowledge so that I can adapt and respond more effectively if I ever encounter such styles in the future. I nodded. That's a wise approach, I said, and she visibly relaxed, almost like she had been waiting for my approval. It was amusing, someone in their 30s looking to a 12-year-old for confirmation. Life sure has a strange sense of humor sometimes. Kakashi, of course, was only 26, the youngest of our group besides me. I found it interesting that she was even considering stepping away from active fieldwork. Curious, I asked her why, and she straightened automatically, sensing the slight shift in my tone. I winced. I really needed to work on sounding less commanding. Both the Hokage and you have been suggesting that I take a break from the ANBU, she replied thoughtfully. Apparently it's been too much, according to you too. And honestly, I could say the same about you, Naruko. You're still so young. You shouldn't carry the weight of such responsibility alone. Anyway, I was encouraged to become a jounin instructor, and I thought, why not give it a try? So here I am. I could tell she was nervous. Kakashi had been in the ANBU since her teenage years, and making such a dramatic lifestyle shift was clearly not an easy decision. You'll be fantastic, I told her with a confident smile, even if it was hidden behind my cloth mask. She scoffed quietly, but I could sense she appreciated the support. So, Yoko, I asked, turning to our other teammate, what about you? Thinking of becoming a jounin instructor too? She shook her head. I don't think I can continue as ANBU. You've told me countless times, I don't watch my back carefully enough. Besides, I'm getting older. Hikaru joked that we're all aging out of the lifestyle. I'm nearly 40, she added with a laugh. It's time I slowed down a little. I've decided to teach at the academy instead. After that, we drifted into casual conversation. Nico, Boar, and Hikaru cheered when they learned I had been appointed ANBU commander. Kakashi simply smirked, at least, I assumed so. Her mask made it difficult to tell. I'd only seen her face once, and as odd as it felt to think it, she would probably be considered conventionally attractive. She had once mentioned the Hatake clan had a tradition of silver hair and masks, and I hadn't pressed further. I only wore an additional mask under my ANBU mask so that, if my transformation ever faltered, the whisker-like marks on my cheeks wouldn't be visible, though my blonde hair and blue eyes would still give me away. Eventually, the nurses ushered us out of the room, and I exited through the window with a quick body flicker technique, heading straight for ANBU headquarters. There, I spent the next few hours reviewing mission reports from returning members, organizing and filing them accordingly. It was repetitive work, but necessary. We were already behind schedule, and I couldn't afford to delay it any longer. A knock came at the door. Enter, I called, adopting a professional tone. An ANBU entered, clearly returning from a recent mission, his uniform in disarray and carrying the distinct metallic scent that lingered in the room. He handed me his report and supplemented it with verbal notes. I nodded, took the information down, and dismissed him. This happened twice more before the clock struck 10:30 p.m., the time I had decided to begin my next assignment. The target, Mizuki-sensei. The goal, capture and bring him in for questioning. I discreetly followed him after he left the academy at 10:45 p.m., pausing occasionally to make my presence less obvious. I remained completely silent, masking my chakra to avoid detection. I remembered what Kakashi used to say. A careless shinobi is a defeated shinobi. Always stay alert. Never underestimate your opponent. Wise words, and something I took very seriously. Even with someone like Mizuki, I couldn't afford to drop my guard. I tailed him carefully to his apartment and waited under some inconveniently thorny bushes until he was fast asleep. Around midnight, I began my approach. I scaled the outer wall without using chakra, relying on architectural footholds instead. I released a gentle gust of wind through the window's crack, sliding the lock open. A silencing seal was applied before I pushed the window up and entered without a sound. Once inside, I used a few swift hand signs. Stone bindings wrapped around Mizuki, a blindfold covered his eyes, and a muffler silenced his voice. Then I lifted him over my shoulder and transported him via body flicker to the interrogation department. There, I placed him in a chair. He fell to the floor, writhing as Ibiki entered the room. "Kitsune-san," he acknowledged me. "Ibiki-san," I replied. Ibiki removed Mizuki's blindfold, and the moment recognition struck, Mizuki's eyes widened in disbelief. "You will need to cooperate. This will go much easier for you if you do." The hallway outside was silent, crickets chirped faintly in the background, and Mizuki slowly nodded, signaling his willingness to comply. Ibiki secured his wrists with reinforced cuffs, then began the questioning. "How did you come into contact with Orochimaru? What did he tell you about this so-called potion you've been developing?" Mizuki gritted his teeth. "I was on a mission." Ibiki leaned in. "What kind of mission?" "I don't remember the details. We were retrieving something. Orochimaru approached me afterward. He said I had potential. That I could become stronger. He offered me a formula. Something that would elevate me far beyond my peers. A path to power." "That's enough," Ibiki said, as Mizuki's words became less coherent. The steady dripping of water onto Mizuki's forehead, used as part of the interrogation, resumed briefly, but when his distress became apparent, Ibiki stopped. Mizuki's gaze, though dazed, began to clear. Ibiki turned to me. "We've gathered enough. Orochimaru may have used Mizuki for a small experiment, but it's clear there's something larger at play. We need to remain vigilant." With that, he departed. I turned back to Mizuki, and he looked up at me. I removed my transformation technique, pulled off my masks, and in that moment, he recognized the ANBU commander's identity, Uzumaki Naruko. His eyes widened in shock. "How could it be you?" he murmured. I pressed the alert button near the door to summon a subordinate to escort him. The mission was complete. Dear YouTube family. That's all for now, but the story doesn't end here. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with all our latest fanfics and adventures. Until next time, keep dreaming and diving deep into the world of anime. Warm regards. Anime Octopus.